Imagine a garden, not just any garden, but the Garden of Eden, lush, vibrant, overflowing with life. This was the paradise God created for Adam and Eve. It was a world of perfect harmony. Animals roamed freely, crystal clear rivers flowed through the land, trees heavy with fruit reached towards the heavens. Adam and Eve, naked and unashamed, lived in perfect communion with their Creator.
They were given dominion over this wondrous creation.
Their days were filled with joy, peace, and the radiant presence of God. This was Eden, a sanctuary of peace, a testament to God's boundless love. Every sight, every sound, every sensation whispered of God's goodness. The air vibrated with the music of creation. Adam and Eve, created in the image of God, walked in the cool of the evening with their Creator. Their hearts overflowed with love and gratitude. They lacked for nothing. In the midst of this paradise stood the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Its fruit, tempting and beautiful, held a secret.
You may surely eat of every tree of the garden, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. For in the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die.
This commandment was not a restriction out of cruelty. It was a test of obedience, a mark of trust between the Creator and His creation. God, in His love, offered a choice. He desired their willing obedience, their love freely given, and He longed for them to choose Him, to trust His goodness above all else. But paradise held a danger, a sly and cunning serpent. The serpent, a creature of beauty and guile, approached Eve. Its voice, smooth as silk, whispered doubts into her heart.
Did God actually say, "You shall not eat of any tree in the garden"?
His words were like poison, slowly seeping into her thoughts. Eve, deceived by the serpent's cunning words, looked at the forbidden fruit with new eyes. Doubt clouded her mind. She began to question God's goodness. Was He holding something back from her? Was He keeping her from true knowledge and happiness? The serpent's lies took root in her heart, slowly twisting her perception of God's loving command. Eve, her gaze fixed on the forbidden fruit, reached out and plucked it from the branch. It gleamed in her hand, a symbol of rebellion. She took a bite, savoring the sweetness. Then she offered it to Adam, who stood beside her.
Here, take and eat.
He hesitated, fully aware of the consequences, but in that moment, his love for Eve outweighed his love for God. He took the fruit and ate. In that instant, the world shattered. The harmony of Eden was broken. Sin, like a venomous snake, entered the world. They felt a strange sense of shame. Their nakedness, once a symbol of innocence, now filled them with fear. They hid from God, their hearts heavy with guilt. The consequences of their actions echoed through the garden, shattering the peace of paradise. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the garden. They heard the sound of God walking in the cool of the day, but this time there was no joy in their hearts, only fear. They tried to hide, but God saw them.
Where are you?
His voice, filled with sadness, echoed through the garden. Adam and Eve, trembling with shame, confessed their disobedience. They blamed each other, and even blamed God Himself for creating the serpent.
Because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and all wild animals. You will crawl on your belly and you will eat dust all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. To the woman He said, I will make your pains in childbearing very severe. With painful labor you will give birth to children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. To Adam He said, because you listened to your wife and ate fruit from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat from it. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil you will eat food from it all the days of your life.
God, His heart heavy with sorrow, pronounced His judgment. He cursed the serpent, promising enmity between its offspring and the offspring of Eve. He declared that childbirth would be painful for women, and that man would toil and struggle on the cursed ground. Section 6. Exile and Hope, a promise for the future. Banished from the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve faced a world shrouded in shadow. The paradise they once knew was gone, replaced by a world of thorns and thistles.
Yet even in His judgment, God offered a glimmer of hope.
He promised a future Redeemer, one who would crush the serpent's head and restore humanity's broken relationship with their Creator.
This promise, spoken amidst the ruins of paradise, offered a beacon of hope for a fallen world. It was a promise of redemption, a promise that one day the consequences of sin would be overcome. This promise, whispered through generations, would sustain God's people through centuries of darkness, pointing towards a day when paradise would be restored. Section 7. The stain of sin, humanity's inheritance. The consequences of Adam and Eve's sin were not theirs alone to bear. Their disobedience had shattered the perfect world God created. Sin, like a drop of ink in a pool of clear water, spread throughout all creation. It stained the human heart, separating us from God and from each other. From that moment on, all of humanity inherited the stain of sin. We are all born into a world broken by disobedience, a world where suffering, pain, and death are unavoidable realities. We struggle with temptation just as Eve did. We make selfish choices just as Adam did. We experience the consequences of our sin and the consequences of the sins of others. Section 8. Echoes of Eden, lessons for today. The story of Adam and Eve is not just an ancient tale, confined to the pages of a dusty book. It is a story that echoes through time, a story that speaks to the deepest truths of the human experience.
We see ourselves in Adam and Eve's disobedience, their shame, their longing for a lost paradise. The story of the fall reminds us that we were created for paradise, for perfect communion with God and with each other. It reminds us that our choices have consequences not just for ourselves, but for generations to come. It reveals the destructive nature of sin, its power to corrupt and to destroy.
Section 9. A Redeemer's promise, hope beyond the fall. But the story of Adam and Eve is not a story without hope. It is a story that points beyond the fall, towards the promise of redemption. God, in his infinite love and mercy, did not abandon his creation. He promised a Redeemer, a Savior, who would one day break the chains of sin and death. This promise, whispered in the Garden of Eden, echoed through the corridors of time. It found its fulfillment in the person of Jesus Christ, who came to earth to offer himself as a sacrifice for the sins of all humanity. Through his death and resurrection, he conquered sin and death, opening the way for us to be reconciled to God and to experience true freedom and life. The story of Adam and Eve, though filled with tragedy, ultimately points towards the triumph of God's love and the hope of redemption found in Jesus Christ.